On the prowl on England's wildest moors is this, the Beast of Bodmin, the mystery cat whose sheep and cattle kills have left a trail of carnage. Was this bushman savaged by a Tasmanian tiger, a creature experts say died out 60 years ago? In the Australian outback, they search by night for a big cat that science says doesn't exist. Will they prove the scientists wrong? Mysteries from the files of Arthur C Clarke, author of 2001 and inventor of the communications satellite. Now in retreat in Sri Lanka, he ponders the riddles of this and other worlds.
One of the most popular exhibits here in the Colombo National Museum is the infamous man-eating leopard of Punani, a fearsome beast in its day. It devoured at least 11 people before being shot in 1923. Fortunately, attacks by the leopards that still remain in the jungles of Sri Lanka are now few and far between. But of course, there are many countries in the world where leopards and pumas are not supposed to exist. Yet, it's hard to discount reports from some of these places that big cats are on the prowl where they shouldn't be.
England's West Country. On these bleak moors, it's feared mysterious and dangerous cats are on the loose. All too often, the mist clears to reveal true horror. Hundreds of lambs, calves and even fully grown sheep have fallen prey to the moorland killer. Eyewitnesses talk of a huge dark creature, a leopard or puma. Even as we filmed one frightened farmer on Bodmin Moor, one of the beasts appeared.
I'm seeing a very, very large black cat.
Is that the cat that's been killing your sheep, do you think?
It's big enough to. It's big enough to be the one. My goodness, it is. Oh, I reckon that's the one that's about 6 foot from stem to stern. I've had to sell my sheep. I was losing so many. And it wasn't just the kills that upset us. It was the numbers that were left alive, disemboweled and living.
She called in the vet.
Well, Rosemary brought in a sheep to us in January that had been killed in a way that I've never, ever seen a sheep killed. And it was just opened, as if you'd opened it with a knife. There were also signs on the udder of actual claw marks. There were 4 claw marks, one of which had penetrated exactly like a cat claw mark. I can't think what else it would have been. Whatever actually killed this animal must have taken hold of the area under the jaw and just held there. And certainly the big cats always go for underneath and suffocate. So on view of that, I really think that probably it was a big cat of some sort.
This film convinced a big cat expert. He says the beast is at least 5 feet long, it's probably a leopard and best left alone. When Rosemary Rhodes goes out at night, she always takes her shotgun with her. In these parts, children aren't left alone to play in the garden. Parents fear the cat may strike. Farmer John Goodenough fears his land may become killing fields, not just for sheep, but for people.
Well, we put this notice up because they bring these children out for walks on the moors, for a little bit of orientating, you know, to read maps and one thing and another, and they wander everywhere, like, you know. Well, if one got stray and should walk in on one of these things that were sleeping, or if it had youngsters, cubs, could be extremely dangerous. It ought to be caught and disposed of in some manner, whether it is a zoo or send them over to America where they want them in the wild lands over there, because we don't want them.
Sightings of mysterious big cats are reported across Britain, from Bodmin in the southwest to Barnard Castle in the far northeast. Unidentified big cats have been spotted from Kidlington in Oxfordshire to Kidderminster in the Midlands. In Wales, a big cat has been reported savaging livestock. And in Worcestershire, Sally Dyke will always bear the scars of her close encounter of the third kind. In Eastbourne, news photographer Terry Connolly had this menacing meeting, and in Evesham, Adrian Hodges barely had time to focus his camcorder. Since the 1960s, the Surrey puma has struck fear in the suburbs of London. Pop star Maurice Gibb of the Bee Gees claims to have seen it. In the Isle of Wight, trackers spotted these huge paw prints. But still elusive and still on its murderous rampage, the Exmoor beast has evaded capture. Near his cottage in deep forest on the edge of Exmoor, Major Paget King Fretz came face to face with one of the beasts.
I came out to shut this gate one evening, and as you'll see, there's a path that I keep cut in the woods. To our utter astonishment, I saw a large, black, cat-like animal squatting in the middle of the path. It was squatting like a cat will squat in front of a fire, and it had a cat-like face, a round, flat face with pointed ears. And I realized at once that I'd seen something strange that I'd never seen before in this country. And my immediate reaction, of course, was this must be the famous Beast of Exmoor that had killed so many of my neighbours' lambs.
That farmer lost 50 lambs. Soon other farmers found their flocks were being massacred. They banded together to hunt the cat, but the beast continued its killing spree. As losses mounted, a squad of crack commando snipers from the Royal Marines moved onto the moors under Andy Buchanan.
Got a team of guys together, zeroed the weapons in and the night sights because we decided we would operate at night. Because the beast, when I'll refer to it as the beast, operated purely at night. One of the guys saw it and he couldn't fire at it because there was a farmhouse right behind it. From what I've seen and heard, I think it's a large cat of the puma variety. But that's not 100% until it's hanging by its heels, which I don't think it will be.
While Britain's big cats prowl on, across the world the Australian Rare Fauna Association stalks its own prey.
OK, everyone, I think we're pretty well organised. Can you come in, please? We'll just have a...
Arthur's mission, to hunt down an animal whose very existence remains a mystery, the Queensland Tiger.
You're going to be taking the western route, remember? Cars 2, 3 and 6 over on the eastern route. Don't leave your circuit at all, right? Keep recording everything you see, you know the usual procedures. And we'll rendezvous back at 20:30.
Scientists refuse to believe there are big cats at large on the Australian mainland. Eyewitnesses disagree. The searchers hope the textbooks will have to be rewritten.
Well, we try to go to areas where reported sightings of the animals that we study at this time of year are most frequent. But every now and again we get a tantalising sighting or two which makes us say, well, let's go out and do some more research. This particular animal we're talking about is something that's often referred to as the Queensland Marsupial Tiger.
From the rainforests of far north Queensland all down the eastern coast have come reports of Australia's big cat. In 1910, a hunter in Kuranda boasted, "Most of the tiger cats I've killed were about 4 feet long with black stripes." From the Bellenden Mountains in 1925 came reports of an animal that was very savage. Its coat was beautiful and striped like a tiger. In 1923, frightened locals told the director of Melbourne Zoo about a large tiger cat, as big as a bulldog with brindled fur and very large eyes. They said it doesn't hesitate to attack a man and often killed their dogs. This unique picture from Ozenkudnook is the only known photograph of the Queensland tiger.
Last time she saw a wombat, she ran over it.
Tonight, Arthur's search has drawn a blank.
Well, it was very good if we were looking for ring-tailed possums. We saw plenty of those. But I can't say we've had too much success tonight, so I guess there's always another day. We'll just keep on plugging away and see how lucky we can be.
Cairns City, fine and moderate with fresh southeast winds with a top of 30 degrees.
At Radio 4CA in Cairns, the Queensland Tiger is the topic of today's phone-in.
At 9:05, it's 26 degrees.
I thought it was a myth. I don't think it's a myth anymore, because last time I mentioned it, we had about half a dozen calls from people who swear they have seen this creature in a limited area, fairly small area here in far north Queensland. If you're one of those people, can you give us a call now and give us a bit of a description of that beast, the Queensland Tiger? Hello? Who's that?
Fred Moulton. I'd like to have a talk about that tiger.
Have you actually ever seen one?
Yeah. We was going along the bush track in a vehicle, and it had been hit early hours of the morning, laying dead beside the road. It was like an average-sized cattle dog, a gingery colour, a face more like a bull terrier, quite solid, big teeth.
Yeah. Gee, I wish you'd picked it up and taken it somewhere, Fred.
Yeah, we never even thought about it.
Yeah. Who's that?
This is Ted here, John.
Hello, Ted. Are you talking about the Queensland Tiger, Ted?
Yes. One Sunday, I decided I'd go over to the river and do a bit of panning for gold.
I looked into the down and saw this cat, which looked back at me, and it had white stripes on it, and the hair would have been a dark colour with the white stripes.
The stripes were white?
White stripes, yeah.
Against a darker background?
Darker background, yeah.
Going on the markings and the size of the cat, I would say it must have been a Queensland Tiger.
Hello, Charlie.
Well, I've listened with interest to Fred, Ted, Stan and Dan. I think there's a Queensland Tiger, and I've seen it.
Well, actually, Nigel and I were both cutting pine, hoop pine, up on Mount Stanley, which is at the headwaters of the Brisbane River. And we were walking along a snigging track, and suddenly I saw, looked very much like a tiger. And it did 2 half rolls on a big old pine stump that must have been about that wide across. And the tiger took up the full distance across like this, and as it was doing the couple of rolls, I said to Nigel, "Hey, Nigel, can you see that, what looks like a tiger?"
Can you see what I see, you said?
Oh, can you see what I see?
Charlie, this was the Queensland Tiger, wasn't it?
Of course it was. And
the most distinctive feature there was 2 curved horizontal white stripes. And surrounding that were these typical tabby cat, dark grey, merging into ginger. It reminded me very much of a cat that is going to spring on prey. And I think Nigel said, well, we'll keep our axes handy.
Right, we'll keep our axes handy.
And we walked, and we walked by, and when we walked by...
Boy!
I don't think Nigel actually saw it leave the stump, but he saw it after it left the stump. It was a tiger of some sort, and that's why one didn't talk about it very much, because bush people were mostly pretty sceptical, but I've reached the stage in life now if I tell it as it was, and that's how it was.
Good on you, Charlie. We'll talk to you again one day.
Thank you. Cheerio for now.
Thanks, Charlie. What an amazing story.
More and more Australians believe the Queensland tiger will emerge from the outback to confound the experts.
As for the possibility that some countries may be harbouring cats unknown to science, that could well be the case. Every few years, zoologists are surprised to discover quite large animals previously unknown to them. They're usually quite well known to the locals, and indeed are often eaten by them.
In Tasmania, reminders of the thylacine, or Tasmanian tiger, are everywhere, but not the beast itself. The last pathetic survivor died in Hobart Zoo in the 1930s. Since then, it became officially extinct. From the end of the 19th century, thousands were flushed from their lairs in jungle and scrubland, sentenced to death by the bounty put on their head. For each dead Tasmanian tiger, the hunter earned £5, equal almost to a month's wages. Today, far from the city, deep in the bush, Rusty Richards plies his trade as a forester with only his bullock team and his dog for company. Usually.
Oh, well, it was funny feeling. Seems like if all the hair stood up in the back of your neck when you see something you've never seen before. And I see every other animal in the bush. You know, he was standing on the track. He about the first metre of that tree away, and he's had his head turned back and his little brick ears stuck up like that. I couldn't tell what he was till he turned round, and when he turned round he had the thick tail and the long brindle stripes going down him. I knew no one would believe me when I told him, but I didn't worry about it. That's all there was about it.
In a lifetime spent travelling the world, Hans Narding has seen many strange sights. One night in the Tasmanian bush, he woke at 2 in the morning and switched on his spotlight.
I saw an animal about the size of a Labrador, greyish coat, which was of course sopping wet. You could very clearly see the stripes on his shoulders, which I counted. There were about 12, where they faded out towards the back. And he had that characteristic big diamond-shaped head of a Tasmanian tiger. And at one moment, he actually dropped his lower jaw and his tongue fell out, and he slightly turned his head. I could see his teeth. And he just stood there. Well, it was one of the highlights of my life. It was just blew my mind.
Bob Green, once curator of the Launceston Museum in Tasmania. Of all the evidence brought to him, the most graphic comes from Bushman Lloyd Poke and his photo album.
Well, in all these prowling that you've done over the years, Lloyd, how close have you got to them? What's the closest you've ever been?
Well, I've actually had one in my hand, Bob. I've got photos there somewhere. I jumped on him over the top and scuffed him like around the neck like a dog, but I found out he had no loose skin there, and I had to really dive the fingers in and crouch down on top of him to hold him down. And I had my legs and knees a little bit far apart, and he kicked up his hind leg, and that's where he caught my arm through, ripped my jumper.
See what you think of this. A fella brought me this a while ago, and he said, "What do you think of that?" And
that's a ripper.
That's
oh God, that's nearly conclusive evidence.
Well, you can't imagine.
You can't imagine anything else
from
far.
anything else,
No,
can
no,
you?
no. You don't see them every day, though. They're not an everyday thing you see in
my
the bush.
word. No, well, that came from out the other end of Tasmania.
Maria Island lies off the coast of Tasmania. Here, the world's expert on the Tasmanian tiger has set up a reserve for it. For Eric Geiler, it's an act of faith. In a lifetime of searching, he's never seen one.
Well, the notion was that we would have somewhere to put a pair of Tasmanian tigers if we were lucky enough to catch them, or if somebody produced a pair, we would have somewhere to put them. Then we looked at this island, which presented everything we wanted. It has open grasslands like we have here. At a long point further down, it has savanna woodlands, it has mountain tops, it's got a range of the habitats that you get in Tasmania, and it had enough food in the form of wallabies for the thylacine to feed on. We're getting fewer and fewer reports of the animal, and I think it's very, very, very much teetering on the edge. It's very, very dodgy. There's no point driving in a vehicle because you don't see footprints, you don't see signs, you don't hear anything. So you just walk and walk and walk, and I've walked over most of Tasmania looking for the darn thing without any success. Get a bit depressed at times.
I'm sure that in some cases, people really are seeing big cats. In Britain, in the 1970s, a law was introduced to regulate the keeping of dangerous pets. Sadly, as a result, some big cats were released into the wild by owners who were unwilling or unable to obey the law.
In the north of Scotland, a female puma walked into a trap. Her captors called her Felicity and found a home for her in a wildlife park. And in the Isle of Wight, Stuart Skinner laid a mystery to rest when he shot an Asian leopard cat, which had once been a pet. In Shropshire, this Asian jungle cat was found dead by the roadside, 3,000 miles from Egypt, its native habitat. Cryptozoologist Carl Schuker believes it may even have interbred with local pet cats.
As far as big cats living in Britain, I don't think there's any doubt anymore. There are certainly pumas. There is a large type of black cat, which the black panther, the all-black version of the leopard, is the closest fit. There are other jungle cats, certainly. There are a smaller type of spotted cat called the leopard cat, and quite possibly the lynx as well. So there are quite a range of different cats living in Great Britain at the time, all of which have escaped from captivity.
Oh, this is Jasper.
Local vet Gareth Thomas believes Jasper is part jungle cat.
I was impressed by this little cat when he came in to me for neutering. Very soon after I was presented with a jungle cat, and he's had such striking resemblance in many respects that I immediately sort of put 2 and 2 together and possibly made 5. I don't know, but
Well, I don't think so. The markings and so forth, the actual shape and facial markings are very, very similar. I think it's a bit too much of a coincidence for the two to be in the same region at much the same time.
Banchory, Scotland. Police Sergeant Eddie Bell is closing in on a killer.
And why are you heading for the Institute?
Well, believe it or not, I've got a sample of dung in this tub, which we hope has come from a cat. It was found next to a dead sheep last October at Barnet Castle in County Durham. The sheep had been killed, we think, by a large predatory animal, probably a cat. So we're hoping that this dung's also come from the animal, and it'll prove beyond doubt that whatever killed the sheep was in fact a cat.
So, does it actually look like it's come from a cat?
Not just look, smell it.
Yeah.
It smells like a cat. Completely different from a badger or from a wild cat or from a fox or a dog. It's this typical of rather acid and really very unpleasant smell. The size is another thing. It's much larger than anything that a fox or a dog would produce. You know, it looks exactly like the scats that I've seen in the Serengeti, made by cheetahs, by lions and by leopards.
Right, yes. So, are you surprised to find something like this coming from England?
In England, yes, absolutely. I mean, this is totally out of context, basically. If I'd found this in East Africa, there'd be no doubt that this leopard or lion or cheetah or whatever. But in England, no, this shouldn't happen.
So many of us now live in cities that we're shamefully ignorant of the multitudinous creatures that share our planet. So it's not surprising that some big cat reports turn out to be hilarious cases of mistaken identity.
Classic FM News at 4 o'clock. I'm Claire Carson. Reports are coming in of a lioness on the loose in North London. Police say there have been 2 positive sightings and another 8 possible sightings of the beast in Winchmore Hill. People are being warned to stay indoors, and a police helicopter has been brought in to help the search, along with zoo experts with tranquilizer darts. Police say no zoo or circus has reported an escaped lion.
And spotted like a creature walking along the bank. So I said to Leah, what do you make of that? I said, it's a bit big, isn't it? So.
And I said, I don't know what that is, but I think I'm going to go and get a camera if I can.
Well, the witnesses were convinced that they'd seen a young lioness, and they actually described it as being about 2.5 feet tall to the shoulder and having a short, light-coloured coat with very big padded paws and walking very distinctively.
They brought other men with nets, big nets, and then all of a sudden there were well, I think one helicopter, but it was pretty noisy, circling the area. But by that time we'd taken, well, Dave had taken a photo.
Well, after about 2 hours, when we finally saw the enlarged photograph, we felt considerable relief when we actually found out what the animal was, according to the expert eye that was cast over it.
And the expert's verdict? The beast of Winchmore Hill was Bilbo, a marmalade tomcat.
I learnt the real truth at about 5 o'clock when the police went down the road saying that you could now come out, that they believed that the lioness was actually a domestic cat. I don't think he wants to be a real lion at all. I think Bilbo's quite happy being a pampered pussycat. I think if Bilbo ever met a real lion, he would run and hide.
I hope that some of the big cats now being hunted will indeed prove to be of an unknown species, or even creatures that have defied extinction. But I've one plea to the hunters. If you do see a mysterious big cat, by all means shoot it, but with a camera, not with a gun. Please don't make it really extinct.